Good. Gonna be just a minute. We're trying to make sure everybody didn't join by Teams. It's a Zoom meeting, so this webinar.
Hello, everyone.
Are you there, Karen?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah. I'm going to go ahead and open up the public part of it while people are joining. So I'll read out the script. Greeting everyone. Today's SRLJC meeting will begin with a public comment for up to 15 minutes. As a reminder, there's a 3-minute limit per individual. Speakers should address the matters which are within the powers and duties of the SRLJC. Speakers should identify themselves and address the chair. Council members will not engage in the dialogue with the speakers. If you would like to comment and have not done so already, send a chat message to the admin administration and she will assign you a number and then announce your number when it's your turn to talk. So Karen, go ahead and set the timer for that. And then let me know if anyone is joined and wants to make a public comment, and then we'll move on from there. If it's not, we'll start the meeting. How's everybody doing? Happy Wednesday to you.
Mike, I don't think that we need to time it if there are no people that want to make comments. And at this point, there is no one. I haven't heard from anyone that wants to make a comment. So maybe we can just wait for a couple more minutes and then move forward.
We'll just leave it open while everybody else is joining. And
okay. And you guys can see the public comment screen, right?
what we see right now is basically what I read off in the minutes.
Okay.
The comment sheet.
Okay.
Karen, do you have others that are still trying to join that are over on the team side of it?
Just Rochelle, and I've already promoted her, so I think she's going to be on in a minute here.
Okay.
I don't know how to answer her. I think you should just go ahead and get started, Mike.
Okay, well then why don't we go ahead and start with the roll call, Karen.
Okay, hang on just a second here. Okay, so let me turn on my camera so you can see me. So we have Director Sparber, Justin Bingham's here. Colin is here. Judge Grill is excused. Steve Bartel, I don't see him yet. Laura Padden, no. Tim Fitzgerald is excused. Randy Unfred, I don't see her.
Laura, I see Laura Patton, she's on.
Laura, are you there? Oh, I don't see her. I don't see her. Anyway, John Haley. Hi, John. I see you. Larry Haskell is sending Katie.
Nobody.
She's here. Chief Damon is excused. Judge McKay. She's here. Tori's here. Aaron's here. Judge Fassbender's here, and Rochelle's here. So we're good.
Super. There's a message from Laura that just showed up too. Okay, well, we've had the open forum, and we had no one that wanted to comment from the public, so we moved on. And I guess we'll begin with the approval of the January 11th minutes that I'm assuming that all of you received. So do I have a motion to approve the minutes from January 11th?
Motion to approve.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
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 So the minutes from January are approved. We'll move on to the next section of it.
Director
I can-
Sparber, if I can interject here, I cannot approve the minutes. I was not here for the full meeting last week, so, or excuse me, at the last time, so I'm abstaining.
Okay, thank you.
And can you tell me who seconded that? Sorry, I didn't write it down fast enough.
I did, Karen
Thank you.
Fassbender.
Okay. Okay, so Karen, if you could bring up the topic for today on the blueprint reform.
Your priorities? for the
Yes,
blue- Okay,
the sheet that I've given you.
okay. Hang on just a second.
And all of you have been kind of inundated with stuff for the blueprint reform. And so I want to give you some background on it, kind of set the guidelines of where we're moving forward with it. And then just kind of give it some legs here so everyone can understand what direction we're headed in. So the background on it is that most of you, if not all of you, have received a copy of the priorities that were set with Maggie Yates a while back. And then also a copy of the blueprint status update. And then just a reminder that out of the resolution 210458 and pursuant RCW 72.09300, that this is part of the body of work for the SRLJC. It's defined. And it's also included in our bylaws under Article 3E, if you're eager to look through those things to determine what it's going to be. So under the legislative matters before this committee, page 6 has a copy of those, and can move down just a little bit. And so for each department to identify the blueprint of reform and evaluate the recommendations and identify with those recommendations, I want to go to raise up their top 3 priorities to move forward with. And then along with those top 3 priorities, I want, if you want to and wish to, refute the recommendations, the reason why you want to refute those that were recommended for your department. You don't see it working, you don't understand how it's going to work, but please don't use money or budget as a reason why, and let me know what the reasons are for that. Then identify what has already been accomplished and what is yet to be accomplished. What you believe the impacts are going to be, either positive or negative, for the top 3 priorities that you have. Lastly, generate other best practices, because I believe in Maggie's priorities, there were some suggestions that were also there that weren't included in the blueprint of reform. But if you could identify those and why you believe that they should be included in the top 3. And then if you can, and I know it's kind of high level right now, but if you can, identify what you believe the costs are going to be associated with your top 3 recommendations. From this, and then before I move on, does everybody kind of get a grasp of this? Do you have any questions on this portion of it? So really what I'm trying to do is to look at the blueprint of reform as its totality, look at the different areas that were and recommendations that were made to your department, go through those recommendations. If you feel strongly about those, because you remember when they compiled the blueprint of reform, they spoke to each department. So, and they made based off of their conversations with each department, what they felt was what was being conveyed to them by the departments, and made recommendations out of those. Some of them were generated on their own thought. Some were actually generated out of the department. So I think it's important for you to review them as leaders and see which ones are still applicable, which ones aren't. And then maybe it's something that it's, that you just don't no longer need because something has changed, and things that I'm unaware of. And then really what is important to us, and I know in speaking with 3 or 4 of the commissioners, what's important to them is what do you believe the impacts are going to be of these changes or these recommendations, and the pathway forward. What will it do to your department? Will it negatively or positively improve it based on these recommendations? Or will it do, or will it be something that you don't want to see as a priority, and you want to make your own priority as well? So, but I would ask, if you're refuting the recommendations that were made out of Blueprint or 4, that you make a note next to it so I know why the reason is, and I have an explanation when I go back to the board of they're feeling that these other priorities are more critical at this time than these other priorities. Does that make sense to anyone? Any questions on that? No? Wow, I'm doing a pretty good job of explaining it. Okay, and then at the conclusion of this process, once I have got everyone's top 3 priorities for their departments, Ken Moore, which is our project manager that works on our Justice Department projects, and I are going to develop a matrix that has everyone's top 3 priorities on it, the impacts, believed impacts, the cost associated, whether we have that or not. And then, if it's not an exact cost, just say best estimate, based on blah, blah, blah. And then we're going to create a grid that goes all the way down the justice system. And then once we've established all of these key priorities for each of you, we're going to resend that back out to you, because impacts or recommendations for one department may impact your department negatively or positively. And what we're trying to do is to create a seamless set of goals and priorities that go from across the justice system. So if you see something in another department that you have questions, we'll reconvene and we'll have to get some more clarity on those to make sure that it's not conflicting with some of the recommendations that you made. And then once we've got congruence and we've come together and we believe that we've got a good set of priorities across all the departments based on the recommendations, then from that, we will move forward. And then when I make my presentation to the Board of County Commissioners, I'll include those. And I think it's really critical, as we look at these, to make sure that it doesn't conflict in some other areas, that we're making sure that we keep a critical eye on it. And I hate to say this but don't think of the money portion of it. Just think of really what it's going to accomplish for the department, based on the recommendations or your own recommendations, what you believe the impact would be at the other end of it. And then if you have a dollar amount, that's fine, because I think what we'll do is we'll come back and meet with you individually, and we'll try to identify some costs that are associated with it so that we can get the best estimates we can. And it won't be exact, I know that, and it's going to be clunky, going through them. But I think if we have kind of an anecdotal idea, or at least something that's close that we can plug into that box, it'll work out a lot better for us. And then from there, I'm going to be working with the board moving forward to create the strategic justice plan. And that's based on the priorities you guys believe are important, and some that, and then, which ones probably should take priority over the others, how we started. And then I'm going to come back to this team again after meeting with the board and talking with them. And we're going to look at it again. What were the priorities? What did they feel some of the priorities were based on what you presented to them? And how we're going to kind of categorize them moving forward. It might be a 1 and 1 and a 2 and another one. It might be both the number ones or ones across the board. I don't know. But we'll have to sit down and take a look and see how it materializes once we've all sat down and talked about it. And then there's a couple ways that, and I know funding is heavy on everybody's mind and what they're thinking, well, we've gone through the budget process, Mike. We haven't had much luck with that. And, what are you thinking? Well, I'm trying to establish a justice strategic plan line item. That's what I'm trying to do with these items, okay? And if we have room to include them in the annual budget during the annual review process, it will be included in there from my office. Does that make sense? So that it plugs into that part of it. And then the other thing is, I know that everyone has heard about us going out for the 0.2% to the public. And just a little bit on that part of it, there are two categories. One category and the proceeds go towards the actual debt service of building, the jail or building the justice system as a whole. And there's a right category of the what is not being spent that grows exponentially as time goes on. So when I'm going to be looking primarily on the right side of the proceeds from the 0.2% and looking for opportunities to get some funding in there, understanding that if it's in the way of staff or we're adding staff to what we have, that's an ongoing cost and we can eliminate that amount going forward. Does that make sense? So what we'll, at the end of it, we'll have developed a 5-year, 10-year, 15-year plan based on priorities. And I know everything changes. Anytime you forecast out that far, it really gets kind of dangerous because all the things move. But I think that if we work together and stay on task for this, I think we're really going to develop a body of work that the Board of County Commissioners can work with and they can forecast it in advance for. Because it's kind of, when we go through the budget process, at least what I observed from the last time, everyone is trying to, it's kind of, siloed. Everybody's trying to get what they need out of their individual apartments. But really what's needed is a look across the whole system and identify these little measures that we're going to do to improve the system as overall, and then categorize those in a strategic plan moving forward. And that's something that the board can operate with. So does everybody kind of understand the process moving forward? Or please ask questions. And one thing I forgot to do, everyone, this is Aaron Stromberger. He took over for Cheryl in pretrial services. So welcome, Aaron. And then also, if you could turn your camera on, where is Karen? I don't see it. Medea Harris is going to take the place of Karen. She's retired. There she is. There's Medea Harris. Karen's retired on March 31st, and then Medea will be the replacement for her moving forward. So sorry, I was supposed to do that at the front, Karen, and I just so involved with my work, I forgot to do it. So,
No worries.
all right. So have you all been working, or did I give you enough time to really sit down and digest what you feel are the top 3 priorities? Anyone? Does everyone have them today?
Nope.
I'm definitely going to need a little bit more time.
And I think that's probably because, the last meeting when I left off, Judge McVeigh had made a good comment, and that's that you really need to see the path forward before you can develop your strategy internally. And so that's why I thought it was important today to kind of line out the whole process so everyone can kind of grasp how we're going to move forward with this. This is meant to benefit you all and to benefit the justice system as a whole. I think if we get all of the pieces working in concert, rather than all of us kind of competing for the dollars, not knowing if we're going to get this other part of it, I think that, it doesn't paint the best picture that we could paint for the Board of County Commissioners. And really that's what I'm striving to do, is to have a strategic plan for the justice system as a whole. So, yes, Judge.
And so coming in, having this transferred from Judge Maurer to me now, I had printed out the 2022 SRLJC priorities, which was what I thought we were working off of. Those were already noted as the 3 top priorities. And so we were just reporting on those 3 top priorities. We're establishing a whole new one now?
No, so the top 3 priorities, I was unaware that Maggie had already set out and had you guys establish a top 3, okay? I'm operating from the RCW and the resolution that says that this body includes the SRLJCs, or I'm sorry, the blueprint reform. So what I need to do is to understand where the recommendations that were made by the blueprint of reform and how that's impacted the individual offices. And if there's a ranking of those as a top three. And once, along with your own personal recommendations, I'm not saying that we're not going to include those. We're going to include those as well. So how would you define the top three priorities? That's really up to you, Mike. I mean, it's really what you think moving forward for your department's going to get the most bang for the buck. If you had an opportunity to sit in front of the Board of County Commissioners and give them your top three, what it would look like, Mike. You know, these are my top three by far. And, you know, for Superior Court, it might be a 13th judge and these other things that go, this is our top priority right here. This is where we want to go. And so that's really what I'm looking for in that part of it. And if there's staffing as part of it, I just ask that you connect the staffing to some element of it rather than say, we need 3 other people. Well, why do you need 3 other people? Because it leaves me flat-footed trying to explain why you need 3 other people. So if there's some explanation, some context behind it, it will really help me do a better job of doing that. And then I know that Chris and Amber are particularly in the rest of the commissioners are particularly interested in hearing what you have to say. So those personal recommendations are going to be important. And so rather than coming to them with a bunch of individual chunks of pieces saying this is what we need, we're going to set as a body of the justice practitioners and say across the board, this is how we're going to do it. And we're not conflicting with other departments causing more issues. You know, a good for instance on that is, you know, the clerk's office might need a bump in personnel that goes along with the recommendation of the judge. The prosecutors could, the public defenders may need that as well. And so that's why I'm going to come back to you after we've done the top three for you to look forward and backward to see if any of those things are impacting your department the way it stands. Okay, any other questions?
So using the blueprint for reform update from there, establishing our 3 top priorities.
Yes, but I will tell you that there's more in the original blueprint of form that's included in the status report, Judge. So, and I know that they have brought some forward, some that they talked about, including the recomposition of this SRLJC committee, and an inclusion of that. So it's worth a read, only if it's only for your department, just to look back in the overall document, and just see what the recommendations were made by it. And if you don't see those, one of the recommendations is a new enterprise system that allows all of our systems to talk together, Discus, SCOMAS, all these things, the internet. That's a huge project. That may be a five-year down the road project that we have to do and plan for. But as long as it's part of the overall justice strategic plan, it gets a glance. Right now it's in a book and we know we all need it, but it's not getting the due looks that it needs from the people that make the decisions in order to fund those kind of things moving forward. So this is what it's really meant to do. So did that answer your question, Judge? Okay, sorry. Any other questions? Judge McKay?
My question is with regards to what you're considering departments that.
So you're the Superior Court. You're the Superior Court. And I know you have other branches, right? So the Superior Court, the clerk's office, and that's why another thing that's really important is for all of us to be represented at these meetings, because we're really trying to focus on a big body of work that we have to get put forward. And, and you might, if you feel that we've overlooked an area, Judge, then add it, say, hey, you overlooked the administration office and the amount of cases that we handle, this type of stuff, but just include it in your body of work. And then if it's like a lower priority, then state that. I don't know what you all need. I need for you guys to tell me what you guys need out of your departments, and then try to push it forward so you guys get some of the things that you need to get. So, as
it is connected with the blueprint for reform, right? I mean,
not solely, Judge. I'm sorry. Not
so
solely.
the SRLJC is now dealing across the boards with something other than the blueprint for reform as well, is what you're telling me.
No, what I'm telling you is that the blueprint reform is a body of work, but did it list that you needed a 13th judge in the blueprint reform?
No,
I don't think it did. but it's something that's certainly a priority.
Well,
Do you understand what I'm
I
saying?
guess my question
Okay.
is why is this body dealing with that?
With your recommendations with,
My recommendations regarding the blueprint for reform, I understand why we're dealing with that. I'm not sure why we're
Right.
going outside of that.
so the only reason we're going outside of it is because Maggie created a document that I wasn't familiar with, and I understand there's priorities in it that I haven't seen. I've reviewed them, but I don't know the why behind them. Okay. And number two, the blueprint reform is primarily our body of work. I'm just including the opportunity for you to include your own priorities if you want to. You see what I'm saying? If you don't want to, you'd rather do that on your own, that's fine. But I'm going to try to include them in this overall justice strategic plan.
Okay, and to tie it to what it is our task is here on the committee, do you have, I haven't seen Maggie's. I'm new to this. Obviously, I think I stepped in
Yeah.
for Judge Moreno. So if you've got Maggie Yates's recommendation out there, it was not attached with the information that Ms. Westberg sent for this
Okay.
meeting. So I don't have that so that it all is connecting and making sense versus if you want to know what my budgeting issues are, I can certainly put my budgeting issues in
No,
here.
I don't. I'm well familiar with those, but yeah. And Karen, did you send that out as a copy with the rest of it? I thought you did.
I did, yeah. Let me see what I called it. Just a second here really quick.
Karen, I think all of those documents were on your attachments for your email from 3/9.
Right, it was called the
Thursday.
2022 SRLJC priority list.
So
Guys,
that
and
was
I can
from,
send that to you if you want. me
okay,
to.
I have that. I just wasn't aware that was the Maggie Yates generated
Right,
Yeah.
yep,
form that director was speaking to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and we have a lot of new faces on this committee too that were a part of all of that, and so I understand that there's going to be some confusion at first, but really this is what we're trying to create. Your top 3 priorities out of your department as you view them, and then as it aligns or doesn't align with the blueprint reform, why you think these are priorities over the recommendations that were made by the blueprint reform, and then if you can tell us the impacts of what it has on the Justice Department as you feel it is, and then any costs that are associated in a separate part of it. And that's about all we need at this point. Then there'll be individual meetings, there'll be, all the other things that go along with it. So I'm trying to create a roadmap to go with as far as an overall strategic plan. And this has never happened before, Judge McCabe, because there's never been someone that has tried to look at all the parts, and try to pull it together as one vision of everything in a way that moves forward. It's always been piecemeal like this. Ever since I've been involved with it, it's been piecemeal here, here, and here. And so this is really just trying to tie those pieces together in something that's logical, makes sense, can develop a strategy over, and then make some projections moving forward.
So my final question is, before I turn it over to somebody else, is do you, obviously Superior Court is what you're considering a department, but do you consider juvenile as part of that? Because they are the Superior Court.
Yeah, but juvenile is juvenile. I think, did they?
Well,
So
they're not.
Oh, wait a
Juvenile
minute.
is Superior Court. So I
No,
just
but I
want to
get
know
that.
how many departments that you want.
So they spoke, Tori, with you individually on all your programming and everything you did. She has a body called out in the blueprint of reform, Your Honor. You see
I'm
what
aware.
Okay. And
I'm
so
aware.
I would ask her to work on the juvenile part that was called out in the blueprint of reform.
Well, I'm not sure she's got anything to work on because it looks like she was glowingly referred to. So I'm just
Go ahead.
needing to know
Go ahead.
whether it is separate recommendations that Ms. Peterson and I will be working on.
Okay. Roger that. I mean, however you see best. If juvenile obviously has a bunch of programs that they're working on. I don't know how connected you are to the programs and working on the inner workings of the programs and the things on the inside. From the court perspective, I see, but there's also somewhat more of the juvenile department than just, the function of the judicial process. It ties into them, but there's some things that administratively she oversees and does as part of her operation. So, Mike.
So, Mike, I've been here almost 28 years, and one of the things I've noticed is that silo effect that you mentioned is very real in Spokane County. And we all kind of go to the table and ask for what we need, and we all go our separate ways. I think we all work together well, but things could always be better. And when you mention enterprise systems, I don't really know if anybody individually in their own silos, I use that term just for an expressive purpose, but like, I don't know if we would necessarily put in that we believe Spokane County needs an enterprise criminal justice system for a computer database, right? Because our local priorities would not necessarily include that. And are we going to give up one of our three for the big picture, right? And so I'm curious, we come with these three priorities, and then are we going to be able as a group to come up with additional outside of that we believe the system could use? Something that would benefit Judge McKay and Tori and everybody else, like collaboratively, as we're pushing cases through the system and tracking them and everything else that's going on. I'm curious at what point might we have that conversation as
Well, I think that's
on a global perspective, I guess.
Yeah, I think we have to include that. And I think that that should be one of our meetings as well. We'll have this grid of top threes across the board, but there's other things that are obviously out of all of our departments' range, which, like I'm saying, is, systems all talking together. And then, I'll give you, for example, one of the recommendations was the ability to do video court in the jail, and have Zoom meetings in the jail. We've crossed that bridge already, Mike. You know what I mean? We've already got, it's not fantastic. It could be more robust, but we're doing elements of it right now, and so I think you're right. I think us collectively are going to have some goals, for the entire justice system and things that we think would improve it. But I think individually in our department, there's things that we would like to see and make changes to as well. Does that make sense? Yeah. And like I said, this is the beginning. We're taking steps before we run here. We're just trying to come up with what we think is priorities and then have a logical path forward. It could be adjusted. Everything could be adjusted and changed along the way, but we got to start somewhere. And this is where we're going to start at this process. Any other questions?
Mike, can I ask a question?
Sure.
So on this council, we have representatives from the city of Spokane, the city of Spokane Valley, city of Liberty Lake, city of Airway Heights. How do we municipalities fit into your whole process? Because this is a very county-centric process that you just discussed, but the budgeting process for the commissioners. But, we all have our own sort of processes that we do, but we're in many ways, integral to the conversation, but we don't fit within what you're doing for the county. So how is that going to work?
I think we evolved that, Justin, through conversation. I know that there's elements of municipal court and probation included in blueprint of reform, that could be reviewed from the municipal side of it. I'm not sure if it's much in the way of Airway Heights, but there are some tie-ins from the blueprint of reform, but I think we're going to expand it. It's not going to be concrete, and I'm no way ready to go before the board and say this is the absolute. So I would hope that happens a lot through dialogue, Justin, because it hasn't been called out, and then give an opportunity for you, to voice what you think you should see from moving forward. It would be a better connection for municipal court and district court and superior court and your tie into it, the probation, pretrial services, a lot of those things. And you have a pretrial services department. Should there be some look at how those two cooperate together, and I know that, and I'm not going back to what David Bennett said about combining all these departments. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just looking at pathways forward that they could work more cooperatively. So.
Well, I guess my question was more about a lot of what you're discussing are budgetary priorities.
Right.
And so that's the question I have is, do you want our input? Because you have all these other municipalities. We're going to do our own budgetary priorities, but those aren't part of your county process.
Correct. Yeah. But I still think it's input that we need. Justin, I think we have to, not necessarily on the budget part, but on the connectivity and the process part of it. And to be honest with you, I don't want to alienate anyone. I want to keep everyone at the table and everybody invested in this. So I wouldn't say, well, municipal court or prosecutor, we don't need your input right now. We're only focusing on the county stuff. That's not what I want to do, even though it comes off. I do want to set the county's priorities because I have an obligation to do that, but I do want the connectivities to the other courts and the other processes to make sure that we're still at the table. So the answer is, Justin, I don't have a great answer yet for it.
Okay, I was just wondering. And I have one last question I wanted to ask, and it's something that I looked at when I was going through the list for prosecution. And I think it's pretty spot on for a lot of the other areas. And that's the reality that the blueprint for reform in its original form is now 10 years old, and the update is now 3 years old.
Correct.
A lot of the issues that we're looking at on these lists are well outdated. That's the one struggle that I have. And I
Right.
know I see Katie shaking her head because she's looking at the same list I'm looking at. Like, okay, we can talk about this. We can just go because it doesn't matter like it did 3 and 10 years ago. So that's one critique I would say of the process of starting with the blueprint. As much as we want to refer back to it, the world has evolved very quickly, especially in the last 2 to 3 years after COVID. So a lot of this may be well out of date.
Yeah, I agree. But I'm going to have that answer. I'm going to say, listen, these recommendations are 10 years old. A lot has evolved from the 10 years. A lot has changed because right now we have a blueprint for reform. We have a book that says these are the recommendations that are recommended to you. Where are we on them? But without explanation or context behind it, the policymakers don't know the difference. And so what I want to be able to do is to convey that to them and say, listen, this is outdated. This has moved on. We've evolved. This is no longer applicable. It doesn't fit into these categories, and then have an explanation for those moving forward. So, anything else? God, you guys were all smiling when this thing started. Now everybody's got a frown on their face. I don't know what to say. And I know it's going to be a little clunky. Not all of it's spelled out. I'm not God's gift at putting this list together, but I believe it's a good starting point for all of us. And so, hopefully you'll give it its due diligence, and you'll read, you'll look at the material, you'll do some thought process and say, you know what, that's really not a priority for us anymore. And even though it's not included in the blueprint reform, you call that out and say, this is the greater priority now than these that were conveyed to the justice team before, and so that we have a list of those. So.
Hey, Mike, can I suggest something?
Sure.
Would it be helpful to you all if we went through and made a list of each of your individual priorities that we think are in the blueprint and the update, and send them to you and go, where are you at on this? Is this a yes? Is this a no? Is this outdated? Has this already been done? Would that be helpful, or do you guys need that? Judge Fassbender.
For me, I think it would, because I was in the original group when the SRLJC first started with the blueprint for reform, and then I've been out of it for a few years. But as far as that first document that was put up on the screen that I know, Mike, you're just holding up there, I don't have that anymore. And so I know, and it sounds like, as far as across the board, a couple other individuals, we've changed hats, so to speak.
Yeah.
So to kind of give us that, documentation guideline to say, okay, this is what we need to work off of now might be helpful, other than, this priority list that I guess we're not necessarily, we have it as a background, but it's not necessarily the list that we're talking about anymore.
Correct. Okay. Karen, can you do that? Make sure they all get a copy of it, or Medea. Okay. Any other recommendations or thought process moving forward?
So just to clarify, what she was referring to was just that form that you had spoke off of at the beginning. I was kind of talking about, do they need us to send them individual lists of their recommendations and where they're at. So that
Right.
was the question. Is that
Yeah,
something
that's
you want
like
us to work on?
I
That's-
would like both.
Okay,
Yeah, yeah, this one, and then the blueprint are formed by category department, even though to Judge McKay's point, there might be some overlapping departments that fall under their purview.
Okay.
And then, and then Judge McKay, if you want to call those out and say, this is all Superior Court and this, so however you want to do it. There's not a right process for this. We're gonna have to get it down and get it put together. That's really what it amounts to, so. And I'm looking for input, like I'm saying, it's to help get this priority set, so. But I do see that we need to have something at least across the board that we're planning for. That doesn't mean that individual departments can't do it as well. I'm just saying if we have a strategic plan and they know we're all working together at this, that the board can review, then I know that would be a lot better for them. So. Any other recommendation, comments? Okay, so what do we think is a realistic time period for this?
well, I think that by maybe Monday, we could probably send out, Monday or Tuesday, we could probably send out our list to you guys, and then you guys could get them back to us, a week before or a week before the next SRLJC,
Regular meeting?
you think? Is that
Yeah.
asking
Is
too
that
much? Or,
doable for everybody? Okay,
and we'll detail that out in the email that we send to you.
yeah, it'd be more, and I'll include this, that kind of is that overall goal on top of it. And then Justin, why don't we spend some time offline, kind of talking through that other part of it, the municipal side of it, and figure how we're gonna do that. We probably should include, I know Jen brings some perspective from coming from the outside courts down here to district court that she can help.
Yeah, because Mike, it's much more than just the city of Spokane. I mean, I was indicating, we've got several different cities here, and I know that Judge Garrell represents Ellery Heights. We have Councilwoman Padden from the city of Spokane Valley. We have Chief Simmons from Liberty Lakes. We've got a lot of different things, and all of us on the municipal sides, we have to set our own budgets. And that's my really big question, because we're all county residents. We all have a vested stake in this, but from an operation standpoint, I just wanted to know how we fit into what you're going to produce.
I don't think that when they developed the blueprint of reform, they gave that much thought, honestly, that part of it. So I think that it's worth talking through and try to figure out, what we feel best is for those. Anything else? Okay. All right.
Hey, Mike.
Yeah.
Just because John and Rochelle are kind enough to sit through this, do you want to see if they have anything they want to add?
Absolutely. Yeah. I kind of thought the priorities would be looked at by John and Rochelle and then the other members that are on the outside, just as a critical eye on them, to express their input into what these recommendations are to help guide us along those lines. It's the way that I saw it, from a victim's advocate standpoint, this is what we're running into, and this is what I see. John, from formerly incarcerated and, as a citizen, could also weigh in on those portions of it as well, and I think that's what it is to strike that balance, and have a balance for it. We're all speaking from our individual paradigms, but they have a unique viewpoint on all of these things, and that's what we want them to come forward.
Well, that's exactly right, Mike. This list of priorities that Karen sent out, I sent out a list of priorities, but they're not on this sheet, and they don't need to be, because my priorities land with other people who have them listed as well. And so my plan as a community representative is to join with and communicate with the people who agree with my concerns. The Community Resource Center, the Mental Health Stabilization Center, Supervised Release Program, Drug and Alcohol Detox and Treatment. Other people have that listed there, so it wasn't important that mine get listed. But you're exactly right. I plan to fall in line and work with other people who list those as priorities. That's where I am on it as a community
And
representative.
that's how I see it too, as you bring it, I'm sorry, Rochelle, I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead. Oh,
Nope, same. I was gonna say the same thing as John. Whenever we go through the priorities, happy to be here, like read through them, just like I've read through the current packet that we were emailed out and just provide a perspective to it.
yeah, and I think that's important for this group, so. Okay, any other comments? Laura, did you have any comment? She might just have her camera on. I'm teasing, yeah, she's probably heavily involved. So, okay, well, that's all I have really, and we'll get this to you as quickly as we can. If you have more questions, please email me, because I know I'm not covering everything, and I know there's things that I've probably forgotten, but let me know. Oh, her audio's not working. Okay, well, just email me, Laura, if you got any questions or any comments that you'd like to make too as well. So, and then I see that there's 6 things in chat. Karen, would you review those real quick and make sure I'm not missing something? Again, you're on mute. Karen.
You're not missing anything.
Okay. All right. With that, if there's nothing else, if anyone doesn't have any comments, and I'll give you back the rest of your day.
Mike, two things. When is our next meeting? And then secondly, I just wanted to personally say thank you to Karen Westberg, because I know this is theoretically her last SRLJC meeting, and I've been there from the very beginning and through all of it. And she has been such an amazing support through all of it, from the very, very first meeting that we had, all through our MacArthur work. She's such an invaluable source of energy, wealth of experience. You just keep going on and on. So thank you, Karen, because without you, nothing that has happened over the last decade would have happened.
That's right.
Thank
I
you
agree.
so much. That was before my hair turned gray. Thank you all. I'll miss you all.
You said 2 things. What was the other one? Oh, when's the next meeting,
Date.
Karen?
The April 12th, the second week of April 12th.
Yeah.
Okay, you should have that on your calendars. And
Okay.
just to remind you guys, I don't know why, but these calendars sometimes add Teams meetings accidentally along with it. It's always the Zoom meeting. It won't be the Teams meeting. So if you click on just join on your calendar, it's going to be a Teams meeting and you'll be in the wrong meeting. So just so you know, I'll try to make that not happen, but I'll try to make Medea make that not happen, but just so you know. So thanks.
All right. Thank you, guys. I appreciate everything you guys do, and thank you for joining and being a part of this. So we'll see you at the next meeting, and check your emails. It'll be on the way. So, guys, have a good day.